Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you are all doing well. Thank you so much for joining me for another video. I'm really excited for this one. I have some books to haul for you. I got 4 new books that I added to my library, and then I also have a little bit of a reading update to do as well. I didn't want to just make an update video because I only really have 2 books to talk about. And so it would have been very, very short, but then I also only had 4 books to haul for you, so I didn't want to do a dedicated book haul video because it wouldn't be very long either. So I decided to take those 2 shorter videos and combine them together into one, hopefully, video of semi-regular length. So starting with the reading update portion, I read 1 book last week, and that was Dreams of El Dorado by H.W. Brands. And I hauled this one in my last video. This was my first book to read on a general history of the American West, and I found it absolutely fascinating. H.W. Brands is one of my favorite historians, one of my favorite writers of historical nonfiction, so I knew going into this that the reading experience itself would be fantastic, and it was. His writing is phenomenal. I really enjoyed his organization and the layout, sort of his approach to how he decided to tell the story, moving in a very chronological order, following a set cast of characters sort of through the timeline as the story progressed. I found it really, really fascinating. And actually, some of the books in the book haul portion of the video were inspired by certain events that were described in Dreams of El Dorado that I wanted to have a more detailed look at. I wanted to know more about some of those events or some of those characters. And so those will be some of the subjects of the books that I will haul for you. But Dreams of El Dorado, my main read from last week. Then the book that I'm currently reading and that I started, I think it was about 2 days ago, was The Age of Gold by H.W. Brands. I'm on my H.W. Brands kick after doing that book haul a couple weeks ago. I got really excited about reading H.W. Brands, and so I'm just sort of going on a bit of a Brands binge, if you will, and trying to read all of his books that I have in my library. So this is his book on the gold rush, the California gold rush, and it is really, really fascinating. I'm almost halfway through, and I wanted to pick this one up just because the gold rush portion in Dreams of El Dorado was fairly fleshed out, and it was actually a fairly sizable chunk of the book, but I still wanted to know more. And so I decided to pick up The Age of Gold, and I have made it to, like I said, almost about halfway through. And so in terms of the story, it's at the period where sort of the mass migration from the east towards the west is happening, of people going out to California to seek gold. We open up with the story of James Marshall and John Sutter. John Sutter owned a mill and was the employer of James Marshall, who is the individual who first discovered gold, or at least first discovered and then publicized the discovery of gold in what is now Sacramento, California. And that sort of launched the American gold rush, the California gold rush, in the late 1840s. So I'm really enjoying this. I'm going to continue reading this for the rest of the weekend and probably through to midweek next week, probably Tuesday or Wednesday is when I'll wrap this up. But I'm really enjoying it. My plan is once I finish reading this, once I finish reading a couple of the books that I haven't started yet but that are going to be in this book haul, I want to do one video sort of recommending a couple of these different books on the same subject as I am enjoying them. Obviously, if I read one and I don't like it, I won't put it in that video. But I wanted to do sort of my first books on the American West type video, and I'll talk a little bit more in detail about some of these books that I'm reading. Moving on to the book haul portion, the first book is called Down the Great Unknown, John Wesley Powell's 1869 Journey of Discovery and Tragedy Through the Grand Canyon by Edward Dolnick. And I love this cover on here as well. I got this used on Thrift Books. I get all my used books typically through Thrift Books, and this one has a little bit of water damage, but I feel like it's oddly fitting and appropriate given the subject matter, so I'm not even that bothered by it. But this is the story of the first exploration through the Grand Canyon. And so this story, John Wesley Powell's story, was told briefly in Dreams of El Dorado, and it was an incredibly epic story. So I wanted to have a more well-rounded presentation of that story. I wanted to spend a little bit more time in that story and with those characters. And so I was super happy when I found this. I literally was just sort of searching books about the exploration of the Grand Canyon, and this is one of the first books that came up, and it seemed to be the best on the subject given the reviews that I was reading. So I'm really intrigued to dive into this one. Next is a book by Eric J. Dolan called Fur, Fortune, and Empire, The Epic History of the Fur Trade in America. Eric J. Dolan is a fabulous author. I have read a couple of his other books and really enjoyed them. And the fur trade aspect of the American West is covered in Dreams of El Dorado. And I knew that that was really one of the first reasons for exploration, particularly in sort of the Oregon area, what is now Washington State, sort of that whole Northwest, or I guess it would be Northwest. I blanked out in my mind. I apologize. So this is Eric J. Dolan's book on the fur trade and sort of the cementing of the Pacific Northwest of the United States. So I'm really excited to get into this one. Then I have a book by Timothy Egan called The Big Burn, Teddy Roosevelt and the Fire That Saved America. I've only read one other Timothy Egan book, and it was The Worst Hard Times about the American Dust Bowl. So I'm really excited to get into this one. This is a very small just design note, but I absolutely love this cover with the burnout fade because it actually pulls through from the jacket. So the jacket actually is cut out, and then it pulls from the cover beneath. Just a little detail, like a little design detail that isn't pertinent to the book at all, but I love stuff like that. So I'm really curious to get into this one. I have not even read much about this book beyond seeing the title, seeing the sort of subtitle, and wanting to read more by Timothy Egan. And last but not least, I have an absolute doorstop of a book. This is Douglas Brinkley's The Wilderness Warrior, Theodore Roosevelt and the Crusade for America. And this thing is an absolute brick of a book. But I have had this on my TBR for quite a while. I've even had it in my thrift book shopping cart for quite a while. I finally decided to pull the trigger and buy it. I was put off originally just by, I shouldn't say put off, I was intimidated originally just by the sheer size of this tome. It is absolutely monstrous. But Teddy Roosevelt is such a fascinating figure to read about. I've read a handful of biographies about him and an equal number of books that featured him prominently. So I'm really excited to get into this one. I don't know when I'm going to read this. I might put this off a couple months, maybe through. So this will be the last book of the year for me, maybe, and read some of these smaller books first. But I'm really curious to get into this one. I've read a lot of good things about it, and Theodore Roosevelt is endlessly fascinating to read about. And so that is the last book for the book haul portion. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to leave a comment down below if you would like, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now, and happy reading.